But to me, the greatest fear at the time was that there would never be justice for the corruption that we were investigating. Fearing that there would never be justice, not just for the corruption, but also for the murder of my mother. I believe, looking back, that was the greatest motivator for us, to document what was being done, what had been done.
Obviously, you were a close ally to your Were you the closest ally your mother had at the time?
I was helping my mother, but she had a very large network of sources. So it's hard for me to make that value judgment. I guess my mother always considered her family to be her closest allies. So you could say that.
Okay, let's kind of move on. Let's get into L-Electrogas, right? At the time of the murder, your mother had received like this huge cache of emails. I don't know if it was more than emails.
Emails, documents.
Yeah. Can you run us a bit through because again, man, like when I did that video about the JIT, there was just so much. Like you forget more than you know, kind of like along the way. So if you can just, in a nutshell, articulate, Electrogas, the bank loan guarantees. There was the overpriced LNG that came into it. At a point, I think it was the Gazan people asking for a 40 million excise tax reduction, was that? Yeah. So can you just like give us that in a nutshell, remind us of that a bit?
Think of the WhatsApp groups that you have with your friends. You go out for dinner and someone pays for you, you don't split the bill properly. So in your WhatsApp group with your friends after that dinner, in between exchanging pornography, memes, stupid jokes, people saying bonjour, I mean, you have a discussion about splitting the bill and you owe me 10 euros and you owe me 50 but you had that bottle of wine and I had a gin and whatever. Imagine that, except instead of 10 euros for a drink, 20 euros for a bottle of wine, 50 euros for rabbit and pasta or whatever, they're talking about 500 million euros for a hospital, 100 million euros for a tanker full of gas, 10 million euros for these passports, 50 million for some other real estate deal, 100 million for the ITS site. This is what they're talking about. But again, in between, exchanging porn videos, memes, stupid jokes, this is what it was like. You had a group of men mostly, who were...
Men mostly or exclusively?
Well, women did feature, but as toys, let's say. They were really talking about cutting up the cake of our economy so that each person could get their own slice.
Slice of the pie. And who was in these chats?
Jürgen Fenech, Keith Kembry, Konrad Mitzi, Joseph Muscat, Joseph Kushkiri. It's all been reported. Joseph Kushkiri was heading the Malta Financial Services Authority.
Okay. All right.
So he was
responsible. They were all in one chat that you're talking about?
Various different chats. But the point is that these people were a criminal organization. They did not get into government or help their associates get into government because they cared about the future of the country, because they wanted to do good, because they wanted to make Malta a proud country. No, for them it was an enterprise. You could call it Project Muscat, Enterprise Muscat, whatever. The mission of this enterprise was personal profit for its shareholders, who were the people around Joseph Muscat.
So how does Electrogas feature in this Muscat project? Because there was also, for example, this bank loan guarantee that was exceedingly dodgy. Why was the government so interested in securing this?
The people involved in Electrogas had no idea how to run a power station. Jürgen Fenech was the CEO of a company that owns casinos and whose clients are mostly 70-year-old women who gamble away their pension. He had absolutely no idea how to run a power company. The other shareholder, Mark Gazan, a guy who inherited a business importing cars. The other shareholder, Paula Bologna, a guy who again inherited a business importing antibiotics. They had absolutely no idea how to run a power station. The other shareholder, Gasol, a company that went bankrupt 1 year into the deal. The other shareholder, SoCar Trading, a company that uses corruption to sell oil and gas on the open market.
This is an Azeri company, right?
Yes. The other shareholder, Siemens, a company that sells turbines. Again, has absolutely no idea how to run a power company in a small Mediterranean island. So it's no surprise that after 3 years of supposedly being in operation, the company had burned through all of its financing, did not have a single cent left. It couldn't even pay for the pencils that it had ordered for its office. So it had run out of money. It wasn't operating. It wasn't generating power. Had already received the first shipment of gas, wasn't burning it because it wasn't generating power. And it needed more money in order to make sure that it could get through another year. Problem. My mother was about to come out with a massive report that the company that had, one of the companies that had promised payments to Conrad Mizzi and Keach Kembri was owned by none other than one of the shareholders of this power company. So you had the minister responsible for the privatization deal, the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff who was responsible for the campaign to privatize the energy sector, and the shareholders, one of the key beneficiaries of this privatization deal, promising money to those government officials. And my mother was about to uncover this whole scheme. She was murdered before she could do that. Had she done that, it would have been impossible for the people involved, Jürgen Fenech, Konrad Mizzi, to sign the deal guaranteeing an extension of the government's guarantee for this continued financial support from private banks. So once my mother was out of the way, the government could extend the guarantee for that financial support. Electrogas could sign new agreements for continued financial support that it was able to get because of this extended government guarantee. And they could ride off into the sunset, or so they thought.
Had your mother put a monkey wrench in the works, what would the ramifications of that actually be?
No private bank would have ever signed off on an additional loan to Electrogas if the person who was supposed to sign off on that loan from the part of the company was involved in the promised payment of a bribe to the energy minister who signed off on that very deal on the part of the government.
And what would the consequence of that in Electrogas's particular context? What would the outcome of that be for the country?
The country would have been left with this massive financial obligation, Electrogas. It had already by that point, I believe, torn down the old power station. It would be left with the mess on its hands that it has today in reality. So at the time, Konrad Mizzi, Keach Kembri, Joseph Muscat, Jürgen Fenech, the other people behind Electrogas, SoCar, were seeking to avoid the mess that they have on their hands today.
Are we still bound to SoCar for the LNG?
Yes, Malta is bound to pay SoCar Trading for shipments of gas, whether it uses them or not.
I believe I read a report in The Guardian some time ago, so correct me if I'm mistaken, that said that we're paying sometimes double the market price. Is that correct?
I think it's between 60 and 30% more than the market price. I can't remember offhand.
So they're like just getting a commission as the Malta losing money hand over fist from Azerbaijan energy deal, experts claim.
What that means is, let's say for the sake of argument, it's 30%. At the very least, I believe it's that. That means that if by the contract, Malta is obliged And I say Malta, even though on paper it's Electrogas, because Electrogas is a monopoly. So if Electrogas spends 75 million euros on gas, that cost is passed on to the consumer of electricity. Whether we like it or not, it's a monopoly. This is how that works. Out of that 75 million euros spent on the shipment of gas, 25 million euros is pure profit for SOCAR trading. Now, obviously, this is way above the margins that a gas trading company, because SOCAR Trading is not a supplier of gas, it's a trading company. There are literally 10 guys in an office who just receive a phone call from the buyer, make a phone call to the seller, and negotiate a deal. They are middlemen. And they get this 30% pure profit just for making phone calls.
And who's behind SOCAR?
The government of Azerbaijan.
Okay. I think Bone has some numbers for us.
John, quoting from the Guardian article of 2018, April 25th, over the past year, Malta has paid at least 131.6 million euros, $153 million, at annualized exchange rates for its gas, nearly twice the open market rate.
Twice. Oh, yeah. Okay. And where are we now with Electrogas? Is it functioning? Is it giving us energy? Are we using it? Are we still dependent on the... I mean, I know we use the interconnector, but how viable was it?
The National Audit Office found that Electrogas is producing electricity at way above the rate at which Malta could be buying it from the interconnector with Sicily. But the catch is...
The rate meaning it's more expensive?
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that for every hour that this light bulb above us is on, we're paying €1. Now, if that electricity comes from the interconnector, it would cost 90 cents. But because it comes from Electrogas, it costs €1. So there's a 10% difference. It actually ranges, I believe, between something like 10 and 30%. So it fluctuates depending on the market rates. But the point is that with all the light bulbs that are on in the country, with all the people who are using their computers, air conditioners, whatever, the difference, or let's say what we're being overcharged for electricity, adds up to hundreds of millions of euros over the long term. And this is money that the Maltese economy is losing forever, because it is not being kept in the country. It is going to Azerbaijan. It is going to Siemens. It is going to SOCAR.
This extra 10%, that comes from the fact that okay, so we've established that we're overpaying for the LNG. Are we overpaying elsewhere? Are we being charged too much for, let's say, operations, or, I don't know, the tanker that's bringing in the LNG? Where are these
any
excesses?
Cost that Electrogas incurs, because it's a monopoly, is passed on to the Maltese public. So even though Electrogas is a private company, the Maltese government signed a deal via NM Malta that obliges it to buy a fixed minimum amount of electricity every year from Electrogas. So even if it is cheaper for Malta to get electricity from the interconnector with Sicily,
we bound ourselves contractually. Let's play a game whereby we pretend that it wasn't that corruption wasn't the prime motivator behind us contractually obliging ourselves to buy this from. What other reasons could there have been?
For what?
For us obliging ourselves contractually with SOCAR to buy LNG for 18 years, whether we use it or not. Is there an advantage, a commercial advantage perhaps, a logistical advantage perhaps, that is not kind of informed by the
in
quest for
some
corruption?
extreme situations, getting yourself into this kind of deal can be a good thing, but that is only in extreme situations where the market price of gas suddenly goes up by a huge amount that rarely ever occurs. So it is only in these really, really extreme edge cases that this deal makes sense, but it only makes sense for a very short amount of time, not for the 15 years which we are bound to this agreement.
For fairness sake, John, we are actually in that state right now because the price of energy in Europe has shot up at an immense rate.
For oil?
Correct. In fact,
But this is not oil, this is LNG. which is-
all energy has, from all sources, the price of energy has shot up. Fil-fatt, quoting from an article on Times of Malta, and Malta limits Sicily-Malta interconnector use as prices skyrocket in Europe, but this was just by chance that this...
It wasn't like Conrad Mitziani's crystal ball.
No, it was
Not at all.
No, it was not. Definitely, they did not have the foresight to know about this.
Yeah. Okay, so obviously... that's a different idea altogether. So it actually panned out that in some strange way, this benefited us somehow. Yeah.
So, yeah, in a very contorted way. But
In
yes,
the
yeah,
sense that
for
cutting
fairness
off
sake.
your legs means that you have to eat less food, probably, and you save money that way. But, I mean, it's a very high price to pay for...
It's a ridiculous high price to pay, yeah.